Alright. Hi everyone, how are you today? So, let's see here. Oh, here it is. So you remember seeing this? This was what we did initially. Our wood is a little small compared to this one, but it worked out. So we created mostly that. We'll do the door today, but we learned how to bring in the ground and put in the arch and cut back the door and then bring the ground back in again. And now we'll just draw on the door. It's still roughing stage and it's kind of ugly at the moment. So this is what I did today. Basically what I did was I followed these bricks. I followed the ground and the stones, and I put in lines, and these lines would be basically the structure of the wall behind the arch. So then I put in this line of stones, and then this line of stones in place will allow us to create the rest of the stones. But as you can see, there's very little room on the sides of the block, but we can put some stones in up here. So we can put this row of stones in and some half stones below them where we can. But basically having this one line of stones in allows us to put the rest of the stones in. So, you know, stones don't generally sit right on top of each other. They're off, right? So we can just create stones that are basically off the one right below it, right? So this one will be here, this one will be long, this one will be here, long, here. So basically we can just recreate the entire wall based on maybe there and here, right? Based on this one thing, this one line of stones that we put in. So that's when you would cut this back and down and start drawing that in. But you know, we need to get this door in, so let's go ahead and do that. So with a skew chisel, I'm just going to do a basic cut in of these hinges. We know that there's a little bit of a space here. Hinges were a lot bigger back then, so we're just going to remove this little bit of area here. We know that this is the center, or rather the end of each door, and then this is like a metal strip around the entire door, and then there's a space. So we have our line in right here, so we're just going to take a little bit off of that hinge. There's our line, so about here, the line, so about here. So the size of this hinge here is going to be basically like that. So we're just going to cut that in. We don't really want a deep cut. We just want a slight cut. Okay, so then cut them out a bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. The work is kind of small, so we're just going to cut those in. go. Now we have these handles as well. I'm not sure how much of that handle we can make work, but basically just cut in a little bit. So again, it's going to be kind of light. Okay, so it's a pretty large skew chisel, but it's really sharp, so I like using it. Okay, now that we have that in, what we're going to do is bring the entire door down a little bit, because we want to get these guys to be raised. So I'll just use a small fishtail here, maybe a better one out here. Actually, this one might be better. Yeah, I think this is a number 3. Yeah. So we'll just get in here, start taking some of this door off. We made those small stop cuts, and since they're small, you can't bump up against them too much, so be careful with that. For you power carvers out there, you can totally do this work with power tools like the Marathon Micromotor. You can use those rotary tools to get this done. More effort, I think, but if that's the way you carve, you can totally get it done. Now on the edges, and then the handles. Again, be careful, because there's really very little depth around these guys. Okay, so now you can see that we basically have these outlined and slightly cut in. So what we got to do is bring this level of the door down a bit. And so I think maybe a fishtail, like a number 3 fishtail, will help us with that, because we just need to get the whole door down a bit. Again, be careful with your stop cut here. here. When you're doing detail, there's just tons of debris that shows up. Gets cut, but not really cut away. So it's ever present. Okay, not totally beautiful, but we're totally still roughing it. So now what we want to do is get this, I guess it's kind of like an outline cap on the door itself. So we're going to get that in there. We know that it's about 45 here, here, and then it just kind of goes around the outside of the door. We'll just get that in there roughly. And we know that it goes straight over here to a 45, and then over again to another 45, and then back up all the way past this knob. Basically like that. So now it's created on the other side. Okay, so now we'll cut that in. skew. It's slightly smaller than the one I've got. And now this arch area, try to get it as uniform as possible. Okay, now again we have to cut the door down. We want to take out all this area here, so let's do that. It's a never-ending process when you're carving, but when you're watching it, it might be a little boring, but when you're doing it, it's a lot of fun. I could do this all day, and in fact, since I do this for my work, I do this all day. Since COVID, this is pretty much my job, wood carving. So you see that I'm using the tip of the skew in order to get into my stop cut here, and that's how I'm cutting it to where I want it to be. Just using the highest end of the skew chisel. To just cut out that little streamer of wood so that I can get that little deep crevice in there. You can see here, going around a corner, or rather going around a curve, is not very difficult as long as you just move your chisel with the curve. So I brace my non-dominant hand on the wood to keep it solidly in place, and then I use my middle finger to touch down on the wood here, and then my non-dominant hand holds the shank of the chisel, and then I can kind of pull my hand forward. When I pull forward, the chisel will move along that line. And then you're easily able to cut the area that you're working on. So now you can see a bit of a bulge because we've cut in every area that we had a line. So the height of this door is, still sticking up. So we got to bring it down to these edges here. Again, we got to take it out. So since this is pretty fine detail, gotta be careful. You just want to bring the level of that door down again. Just stopping at your stop cut. Thanks, Ralph. It was very nice of you. Much appreciated. So continue bringing it down, and when you do that, you can slowly see it come into place. And let me bring you a little closer so you can see. Maybe that's better. So I'm gonna just, you have to also remember that sometimes you're gonna hit the grain in the wrong way, and if that happens, be sure to pull your tool off and cut it from the other side, because when you're doing the fine detail like this, the last thing you need is to cut off more than you want. Up here, you can kind of make mistakes left and right. Always fixable. Up here, certainly. But down here, now that we're working on fine detail, gotta be careful. You can always glue it back on. It's, you know, there's no project that's unfixable. But that breaks your work into a couple different phases. So now you see I'm just bringing it down. See how I have to stop here? I gotta stop here because the area that I'm cutting into isn't as deep as what I just cut. So we have to go back up here and give us a slightly larger stop cut so that this will come free. Okay, I'm due up here at the top of the door. That's where a fishtail comes in. This Schaaf tool, which I got at Bare Wood Supply in the whole set, it's fantastic when you're using this flare. When this flare comes out, it comes, you know, from a narrow end to a high end, and these corners can really help relief carvers, because you see I'm just kind of taking off what I need with that corner, and it really just allows me to take off what I want in narrow areas or hard to reach areas. But then it also lets me take off a swath of material. You see that? Super helpful. Great tool. Okay, so I have it here pretty well. Now, here's another good thing to consider. We're obviously bringing the level of the door down to the level of our cuts in these areas, but they don't have to be perfect. And the reason I say that is because we're going to put grain. We're going to cut this door into pieces. These planks were created to create the door, but in addition to these sections of the door, we're also going to put in grain to denote the wood type, right? The grain in the wood. So a lot of this roughness of the door, slightly higher here, the proper height here, maybe accidentally a little lower here, those areas won't matter as long as it's mostly correct. Once you start putting the texture of the door in, a lot of those imperfections just disappear. So don't get too bogged down in what you think is just too imperfect. I'll give you a little more light here. That might help a bit. So here's one of those little mistakes. It's gotten slightly deeper here than I wanted, but it's not a problem because we're going to texture this door. Okay, it's looking good, looking good. A little bit of depth here, and a little cleanup. And then we'll clean up here. I'm going to take a little bit of depth right out of this section here. There we go. Nice. All right, so let's do a little bit over here. Okay, and then there's a lot up here we want to get rid of. Again, the fish tool is just super helpful. Okay, so since we started today, we have seen the level of this door go down a few times. Now, could you make this all in one shot? Sure. You could draw your lines in, draw your hinges, your door handles, the frame of the door, this outline of the door. You could draw it all in by pencil and cut deep and then do it all at once, certainly. I just do it in pieces because Sunday is my relaxed day where I'm not doing anybody else's work except for my own and recharging my batteries for the week. So if you want to do it all at once, go for it. For me, I'm just really relaxing. Let me get another tool. Oh, no, no, no. Here it is. This one's even smaller than the other one. And that allows me to get in between that frame and the hinge. Okay, now I think we need a little more depth here, just a bit. Okay. Okay, now we have a bit of that. Now what I'd like to do is you may be able to see that this door, this archway here, this area here, and this area here don't match. So I want to cut that out so it's straighter. So when you look at your carving, you can see that, you know, you're on this right hand side of the door. So you can see in that direction. So we're not going to be able to see this corner here in a 2D picture. But when we create it here, we definitely are going to look, because your mind is going to move your body so you can see everything. So we need to try to get that cleaner. So what we're going to do is use a, well, I guess we could use a V-parting tool. I haven't used one of those today. The V-parting tool that I have a few V-partings. I have quite a few V-parting tools. Let's go ahead and try to just square that up a little bit. The one I have for Schaaf is fantastic too, but it has a slightly rounded bottom to the V-parting tool, which is really, really helpful. But in this particular case, you can see that I want to square it up, not round it up. So I'm going to use this other one I have. Now that that's getting nice and square, I hope you can see the work. There. Now that that's square, it's much better. Let's go in here and just remove some of this debris, a bit of debris in here that we can get rid of. Straighten it up a bit. And as you can see, there's a little bit of a frame here, which is good. Might want to make it slightly larger just because we can. There, see, it's a little more narrow. Let's do this side a bit, since we just cleaned it. Your V-parting tool movement can do a lot of debris removal also. Nice. Okay. So in a lot of ways at this point, what you can do is sand. If you'd like to sand, you can sand. Sanding is a great method to get things really clean. But I'm just going to carve it off. And there's no wrong way to do any of this. Especially on your day off where you're just having fun. It can be a little meticulous when you get down to the detail phase. I can see that the height of the door here is just a little too high. So easily missed it while I was working before. This should line up and be much prettier to look at when I bring the level of this side down. Okay, so now we have that outline there. So what we can do now is put in the slats, each individual board for the door. But before I do that, I think I'm going to bring in the floor again. I don't know if you can see it, but it's slightly uneven here. There's a lot of debris here. So I'm going to try to clean up that edge. So with the larger shaft skew, I'm just going to get another line in here at the bottom of the door. Initially, we're just going to start right at the bottom of this door and just move it over. Try to follow the bottom of the door. Yeah, that's about right. It's a little tiny bit off right here, but we can easily remove that there. Cool. Now we're just trying to clean up and get that debris out of there. Okay, so now you can see that the door is lined up with the floor, but the floor isn't exactly lined up with the door. So, you know, this could just completely be a labor of love, because you're just going to sit here and try to flatten this floor into this door. And I probably shouldn't spend too much time on this, because it can take quite the long period of time. So I'm just going to do a little bit, and I think I do this with you each week, but I then forget to clean it up before the next video. So I'm just going to do this little area here just to show you, and then we'll go on to something else. So let me try to explain this to you. Alright, here we go. Here's just a piece of scrap. So basically, you know, you have this door, right? You have this door here, and there's a line, right? There's a line, right? Let me use a better marker. You have this line here, right? And then you're lining it up with your door here. But every time you cut right here, every time you cut there, this line drops, right? So you have this bump right here, right? And what you really need is a flat line. So we're just going to cut off this area, this bump right here. We're cutting that off. So here is, oh, here we go. So here it is, right here. You have this area here, and we need to remove that section right there, all along the length of that. So the more straight you can get it, the better your mind can understand it when you're looking at it. So that's really it. Has to, you know, I'll do that. I keep saying that, but I'll do that at another point. But you guys need to be able to do that. So let's go to the next point, which is, since I'm not going to sand it right at the moment, what I want to do is clean everything that has pencil marks on it, right? So pencil marks, for me, look so ugly, but you need them, right? So I'm going to just remove it from the side here. Some of these stones here are higher, rather the door is higher touching it than in some other places, so I'm going to cut those to get them uniformal. Cool, right? Wow, thanks Ralph, it's very cool of you. So here we have much better uniformal cut. I wonder if you can see that. So the uniformal cut is the same height here as it is right here, and we want it to be uniformal all the way down, because now that it is uniformal, we can get this, the edge of this door really flat. And when it's super flat looking and all the same height, you can get it to look correct. Probably see a nice sheen of light from here to here. Well, it's kind of messy here, but you can see a nice sheen of light in here, and that's great. So we want everything to have that. So we're going to clean this up down here now. Again, a ski chisel is super versatile and can help in so many ways with these cleanup issues. And then here, you can see that it's flaked away a bit. It's okay. No problem. Okay, nice. So I think we're going to have a slight problem here because the height of this outer ring is pretty low. So we're going to put a slightly deeper stop cut in here. And then we're going to push the door up underneath it slightly, just a little bit. Again, since we're going to texture it, it's not going to be a problem. Should be able to see that the door's got a little bit more 3D now. Cut that free so it can be cleanly seen. Cool. Now, nice. So now it's a little clearer, but we got a little debris in there, so that's kind of ugly. There it is. And now you can see that that side's very clean now. Still a tiny bit tall here. And now that this side is clean-ish, we can go and try to do other areas. Also, I think there's a bit of a break right here, so good. So now that that's cleaned up, it happens, you know? It just happens. So sometimes you just got to get in there and clean it. Cool. Now this one. Cool. Now what I'm going to do on this edge is I'm going to bring, I'm going to basically, a lot of these areas we have a flat, square, 90-degree cut. And what I'd like to do is to just put a small cut on the edge, kind of rounds the edge, call it a chamfer and machining, but basically you're just removing that edge. And by doing that, it does a couple things. By doing that, it removes any breaking points along the edge, which basically they stop the wood from crumbling away by cutting that off. And it also makes it look a little more 3D. So by cutting off some of these edges here, I'm gonna help myself because it will stop crumbling away. See how it just keeps falling apart? Super fine detail. This is a part of a super fine detail issue. Another way to stop that from happening is doing a quick sanding. So you can sand it down, and it does that basically everywhere. And that's certainly helpful. But you can also do it through the carve. It's just, you know, it's a lot more meticulous work. So just taking that basic edge off. Okay, so now let's do that on the hinges. Now that that's cleaned, we have to get the very end of the edge of the hinge. Good. And then let's do this one. This one over here. Okay, it's harder for you guys to see when I go this way. Just try to get it done quickly. Okay, so now we want to just kind of clean it. So we can use the fishtail for that because we can kind of just slice off the dirty areas. And we can also see now that there's a slight height issue of the door here. Nice. Clean this one up. This tool needs to be sharpened just a bit more. Do I have another one here? Yes. Just a slightly larger one. Just as useful. Okay, let's go to the other side. And we did miss this section here. Good. Okay, so now let's go ahead. We can do the handles in a bit. The handles probably aren't going to get that much extra help. They're just so small. So let's look at our artwork. We need to put in 3 panels on each door. So I'm going to have to basically eyeball what we want here. I think about there's good. And maybe a little bit more. Good. And then about here. So let's basically goes to the outside of the handle. Outside of the handle here, outside of the handle here. So we know about the height of the handle, or rather the distance of the handle is a good measuring line. Try to get it as straight as possible. Most of these planks are pretty darn straight. So we'll do it again on this side now. That's about right. So let's get our small skew, since we have a small one, and try to get it as straight as possible down. Not too much depth, but enough to cut it. We're not going to have to drop the door again, but okay, so it's already looking better. Let's do the other side so you guys can see it. Can you see it? Good. Slightly off. Okay, so now you can see the wood sections of the door. So what we'll do here is, again, use the small skew chisel to put a small edge on the, each edge of the door. And that can build your 3D as well in your mind's eye. See that it's slightly off right here, curtailing your ability to get that nice and pretty. Good. Now let's do the other side of this same side of the door. Take the edge off of that one. Okay, now it should look a lot better, at least on this side. So this one now. Okay, and then we'll turn it and yeah, this way. It's hard to pull that off there because of this archway. It's hard to get the chisel in there. So what we'll do is we'll use the bottom edge of the chisel. And then maybe in certain areas we can get that corner in there. Much harder though. Okay. Then this one. Here we go. Good. And then this one. Got a little more depth in there than I wanted, but it's okay. Get everywhere. Let's look at that. Did I get everything? It looks like I may have missed right here. Now let's line up a little more of this door area. This is going to be much harder. Let's take this off first. Oh, I guess that's finished. Okay. Cleaning this area is harder because there's just not a really easy way to get in there. Doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means that it takes a little ingenuity, I guess. So, try to go this way. The problem is if I try to go that way, it's against the grain. And in such a small area with very little area to work, if I do it wrong, it will chip away. And if it chips away, you got to redo the whole thing, which would mean that I have to drop the door again. I don't want to drop the door again. Okay, that's working. Okay. I always wish I had see if I can reach that. Yay. Cool. Okay. Let's try to clean this one too. This one's just not very clean. Okay. Well, we can clean up the handles a little bit, I guess. I'm going to put a slight bend on these. You can see that the door itself, I put these handles on here and I bent them in towards us to the right. So maybe I can at least turn this square. I can turn this square here a little bit to the right. Okay, so here's another tool I haven't used before. This is like a super, oh my god, 1mm V-parting tool. So that is super helpful when you're doing detail stuff to get into like areas like this. The only other way to get in here to remove stuff is with a rotary tool, which I also use, but they're kind of noisy, so or sandpaper too. Sandpaper also works. So we have a small bend in there. The only way to make that any better would be to bend the other side too. Okay, so now we can get in there and remove that. I'm certain that you can find a way to make these handles look better. But they're so small. Okay, so at this stage, what we can do is round off the hinges a bit. Just take those corners off. Slightly different shape to them. And then of course you just clean up the door a tiny bit here on each edge. Just clean up. Okay, so that's pretty clean. Again, it just keeps bothering me, but you're going to want to straighten this floor. Okay, so it's just imperfect and it's bothering me. Okay, so next week I will finish off this piece by drawing in this wall up here and putting in a little bit of wall behind the arch. And then we'll clean it up. And then if we have time, we'll put a little bit of grain in the door and maybe some bolts on the hinges. And we can also roughly texture the stone, which is pretty cool looking if you want to do it that way. So, all right. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope that was beneficial to you guys and gals, kids, whoever's watching. And again, we'll see you next Sunday, okay? Thanks, guys.